Hi everybody, Dan Illman here with the June 14th edition of Top 10 Tuesdays on DRFTV. This week we'll take a look at the 3-year-old male division with the Triple Crown now in the books and 3 separate winners of the Triple Crown races. It's a wide open division to be sure. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your top 10. Please send on the Daily Racing Form YouTube comments section. 2 horses made my honorable mention list this week. They're right on the cusp of the top 10. Messier in Southern California, the runaway winner of the Robert B. Lewis Stakes with a gigantic Beyer speed figure, then subsequently second in the Santa Anita Derby behind stablemate Taba, and then last time out in the Kentucky Derby, just up close to the pace, a very wicked pace in the Derby, so I'm willing to take that race with a grain of salt. Tim Yakteen, it'll be interesting to see how he manages his 2 top stars in Southern California. Of course, there are races like the Haskell at Monmouth, the Jim Dandy and Travers at Saratoga, and later on in the summer, the Pennsylvania Derby at Park. Or if you'd like to stay home, you could run in a race like the Shared Belief. Messier is, of course, also an Ontario bred. He could run in the Queen's Plate, although I haven't heard any sense that that's kind of in the books right now. The other one is Corniche. Now, you know Corniche. He's last year's 2-year-old champion. He was trained by Bob Baffert. He's now with Todd Pletcher in New York. And right now, Pletcher is planning on running him in the Amsterdam, sprinting at Saratoga. A successful run there could lead to an opportunity in a race like the King's Bishop, which is the signature race for 3-year-old sprinters. Or, of course, you could stretch him out for a race like the Pennsylvania Derby. He's missed a lot of time, obviously. We have not seen him since the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, but the talent is there. Let's start with number 10 on our list, and that is Messier's stablemate, Taba. We're going to take a look at Taba dominating the Santa Anita Derby. And when I say dominating, just consider this horse's lightly raced status. It was his second lifetime start. He was stretching out from 6 furlongs to 1 1/8 off a 103 Beyer speed figure sprinting in his debut. He set a very good trip off 2 very good horses and takes the measure of the much more experienced Messier in the stretch. Here's a 102 Beyer speed figure for that race, and he ran in the Kentucky Derby in only his 3rd lifetime start. I think the lack of experience worked against him. I think the fact that he was in behind horses for the first time worked against him. And I think shipping cross country, considering it was only his 3rd lifetime start, worked against him. But if you watch his first 2 races, including the race we just saw, the Santa Anita Derby, there's no doubt the talent is there, as is the pedigree. He's by Gunrunner, and the fact that he sold for $1.7 million in a 2-year-old in training. There's a lot of options for Taba. Maybe he stays for the Shared Belief. Maybe he goes for the Haskell. Wherever he goes, he can contend in this division. Number 9 is Simplification. And Simplification is one of those rock-solid horses in this division. We saw him win the Fountain of Youth. We saw him finish a good 3rd in the Florida Derby. In the Kentucky Derby, he finished 4th and was running on late at the end of that race. And in the Preakness was the one race he didn't fire. And you always wonder, was there an excuse? Yes, there was. Antonio Sano found out after the race that his charge bled. He is getting some much-deserved time off, and I'm expecting we'll see Simplification back in the fall. We just saw him win the Fountain of Youth in our race replay. Number 8 is Cyberknife. He's new to this list. He broke onto the scene with an Arkansas Derby triumph 3 starts back over Secret Oath, who would come back to win the Kentucky Oaks over Nest, who would come back to finish 2nd in the Belmont Stakes, and then Secret Oath would come back to run 3rd in the Preakness. Cyberknife ran in the Kentucky Derby, one of those horses that was up close to the pace and paid the price, and then he came back in the Matt Winn last week at Churchill Downs. It was a good confidence boost for the Brad Cox trainee. He had to work. He only won that race by a nose, and his career best Beyer speed figure of 94 is kind of light compared with some of the others. But this is a horse, another son of Gunrunner, but one that's been very green throughout his career. I'm just getting the feeling that he's figuring the game out slowly, and maybe he'll be a factor in the second half of this season. White Barrio has been a factor in the first half of the season. White Barrio, as we see here, winning the Florida Derby, coming off the heels on a victory in the Holy Bull. He was the most accomplished 3-year-old in South Florida going into the Kentucky Derby. Didn't fire in the Kentucky Derby. He was wide. He just didn't run his best race. Safi Joseph is planning on a confidence boost for White Barrio. Won't be seeing him against the big guns. We will be seeing him perhaps in the upcoming Ohio Derby at Thistledown, and that would be a good spot for White Barrio to get back on the beam. The number 6 is Rich Strike, the winner of the Kentucky Derby. He pulled off a shocking upset that day. He got a great trip. He got a great ride. I also thought he ran very hard in the stretch to win the Derby. Now, they skipped the Preakness with him. They ran in the Belmont, and we saw what happened in the Belmont. He was last early. He was wide turning for home. He tried very, very hard. He just wasn't good enough on the day. Rich Strike, I expect to get a little bit of a break perhaps again and come back for a summer campaign in races like the Travers and races like the Jim Dandy. Maybe some of the lost luster from the Kentucky Derby can be recaptured in some of those races. Rich Strike, though, for a lot of handicappers must prove that the Kentucky Derby was not a one-off fluke. Zandon is the number 5. That's the winner of the Bluegrass, the race we showed right now. And Bluegrass was a race in which Zandon had some traffic issues. He weaved his way through. He showed the professionalism that maybe a horse like Cyberknife doesn't have in his holster just yet. And then, of course, Zandon loomed boldly in the final furlong of the Kentucky Derby, only to be beaten back first by runner-up Epicenter and then outfinished by rail-skimming closer Rail Strike. But this is a horse that's never been off the board from 5 lifetime starts. The win in the Bluegrass showcases his quality, and I'm excited to see what we get from the Chad Brown trainee, whether it's in a race like the Travers or the Haskell or the Jim Dandy. So lightly raced, lots of upside potential. The top 4 horses on this list, I think you could pretty much throw a dart and say 1, 2, 3, 4. They could go in any order, but this is my order. Number 4 is Jack Christopher, undefeated from 4 lifetime starts, sparkling performance in the Grade 1 Woody Stevens, his second start as a 3-year-old. Here in the Woody Stevens, he pressed the pace outside, took over the lead, and it's off to the races. He wins by 10. He wins with a 107 Beyer speed figure. He's probably one of the fastest, if not the fastest, in this entire crop. And you have to remember, he's shown talent since day one. He was one of those Saratoga morning horses where everyone said he's working tremendously, and then he ran to it in his career debut. In the Champagne, his second lifetime start, he ran away with a 102 Beyer speed figure, and he likely would have been the favorite or the second choice in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, along with Corniche, if he didn't get injured. But he's come back with 2 starts for Chad Brown. He won the Pat Day Mile in a race more of workmanlike fashion than anything else, but then the brilliant performance in the Woody Stevens. As of right now, he has yet to go around 2 turns. It'll be interesting to see if Chad Brown wants to test him in the Haskell. From a talent standpoint, he might be simply the most talented 3-year-old of this crop. Epicenter, what can you say other than he's so consistent? He won the Risen Star. He won the Louisiana Derby. He ran so well in the Kentucky Derby, making the first run into the fast pace, beating back Zandon, and just failing to hold off Rich Strike. And then in the Preakness, maybe he was just a little bit flat from the gate. He was far behind. He tried to make up a run on early voting, tried very, very hard, but just couldn't get there. Maybe he deserves to be number 1 on this list, coming off 3 consecutive triple-digit Beyer speed figures and 2 classic placings, but he didn't win the Derby, and he didn't win the Preakness, and that's why right now, Epicenter is number 3. Early voting is number 2 by virtue of this victory in the Preakness, and he just looked very good in this race. He was comfortable throughout. He got a great trip, tracking a big long shot. Jose Ortiz moved to the 4, turning for home, and he always had enough to hold off Epicenter. 4 starts, 3 wins, a 105 Beyer speed figure performance in the Preakness, but the only loss came to the hooves of Mo Donegal. That was in the Wood Memorial. They were a neck apart, I believe, in the Wood Memorial. They're a neck apart on Top 10 Tuesdays because number 1 is Mo Donegal. Mo Donegal beat early voting in the Wood Memorial by a neck. Mo Donegal ran just fine, went 5th in the Kentucky Derby behind Rich Strike, and he got his revenge on Rich Strike in the Belmont Stakes last week, going a 1.5 miles. Talk about traveling comfortably throughout. He was really moving strongly on the second turn, and once he got into the stretch, he stayed on all the way down to the wire. And again, from a Beyer standpoint, he's yet to Beyer 100. The Belmont was a career best 98, but this just seems like a horse who's consistent, and in races like the Travers at a 1.25 miles, where distance and stamina are so important, Mo Donegal fits the bill. He's beaten early voting, he's beaten Rich Strike. Mo Donegal right now number 1 on Top 10 Tuesdays with early voting, Epicenter, Jack Christopher, and maybe even Zandon nipping at his heels.